Hello everybody, my name is Mario5514 and welcome back to another Splatoon Talk video. In this video we're going to be looking back at some of the weapon kits from the Splatoon 1 era, specifically the Chargers, and we're going to be ranking them on their style and their power like I've done with the regular shooters, the burst fire weapons, and blasters, as well as the rollers. And we're going to see which one will have a highest out of 20 points. And without a further ado, let's get started. First up is the Splat Charger with Splat Bomb and Bomb Rush. This is the first Charger we're introduced to the game after we hit level 3. It's pretty straightforward having a Splat Bomb and having Bomb Rush on top of it. It's not bad for the weapon, but I don't know why it has heavy special depletion, even though Bomb Rush is at a cheap PFS at 180p. I don't know why it has heavy depletion. Style-wise, the Chargers in Splatoon 1 look a lot better than what they looked like in Splatoon 2 and in Splatoon 3. So for its style, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Power-wise, Splat Bomb and Bomb Rush is not bad, but I kind of prefer a special that has power behind it. But for power, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10 for a score of 13 out of 20. Next up is the Splatter Scope. It's the same thing as the regular Splat Charger, but with added range because of the scope on it. Same thing, heavy special depletion on a weapon with Bomb Rush with its PFS at 180p. Style-wise, it's the same thing, but with a scope. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Power-wise, same thing, 6 out of 10, 13 out of 20. Next up is the Kelp Splat Charger with Sprinkler and Killer Whale. Now we have something interesting here. The Kelp Splat Charger was one of the Charger kits that you had to obtain through one of the sunken scrolls or blueprints that you've got or that you have to collect upon defeating one of the Great Octo weapons in Octo Valley. So having Sprinkler does help in charging up your special, and Killer Whale being a cheap special at 160p. It's kind of crazy, but kind of reliable for the weapon. But on top of it, you have medium depletion. Style-wise, I kind of like the Kelp logo or the Kelp sticker on the sides of the tank, but there's nothing like that makes it stand out from everything. But I'm still gonna give it a 7 out of 10. You know what? I'm gonna make it an 8 out of 10 actually. Style is 8 out of 10. Power-wise, Sprinkler and Killer Whale works a lot better than Splat Bomb and Bomb Rush, even though Sprinkler kind of drags the weapon down or even kills it. But Sprinkler on Charger is pretty much helpful for charging it because of the Charger's low painting output. So for its power, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 for a score of 15 out of 20. Next up is this Kelp Splatter Scope. It's the same thing as the regular model, but with added range, like I've said. Style, still an 8 out of 10. Power is still 7, 15 out of 20. Next up is the Bento Splat Charger with Splash Wall and Echo Locator. This is a very good weapon that anyone would like to use. I think this was another weapon that you had to get from Octo Valley through the blueprints, unless that was just for the Kelp Splat Charger. But on top of it, you have Splash Wall and Echo Locator, and its PFS at 200p is kind of acceptable, even though you have medium special depletion, so it's kind of be a bit of a pain if you get splatted. But Splash Wall and Echo Locator worked well with the weapon, so style-wise, the weapon is just great. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 for its style. For its power, this is actually a lot better than some of the first two Chargers that I've seen. So for its power, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 for a score of 16 out of 20. Next up is the Bento Splatter Scope. Same thing as the regular Bento Splat Charger, but with added range. Style, 8 out of 10. Power, 8 out of 10, 16 out of 20. Next up is the Classic Squiffer with Point Sensor and Bubbler. This was one of the this was a weapon that was a Charger that was used more than the other Chargers that we see aside from the Bento Splatter Scope. But on top of it, you have Bubbler. Bubbler was one of the most broken specials in the game, according to ProChar, that this special was used most with the Cherry H3 nozzle nose, given that you have light depletion. And with the Classic Squiffer, you have light depletion, but you also have Point Sensor that comes with it. I think I like Point Sensor for the location and bubbler to protect yourself when you have the special, or when you're using the main weapon. Definitely works a lot. And on top of it, you have light depletion. Style wise, I kind of like the colors in the first installment more than what we see in the later games. So for its style and vibrancy, as well as for the nostalgia look on it, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Power wise, I mean, you are relying on bubbler than you are with the point sensor, but I mean, it's a very reliable location wise kit, as it allows you to use point sensor to know where your opponents are, and bubbler to help protect yourself, as well as to spread it along to your teammates, extending the life of the bubbler, I think, according to Inkopedia. So for its power, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 for a score of 16 out of 20. Next up is the new Squiffer with Ink Mine and Inkzooka. Even though I have a few things to say about this weapon, even though Inkzooka is very powerful and does compensate for the Squiffer's short range, Inkzooka is 220p, which is very atrocious, especially for a weapon that has shorter range than any other charger in the game. But on top of it, you have Ink Mine, and according to ProChar, this was a single-use sub-weapon than what we see in the later games, where you could put down 2 of them. In Splatoon 1, you could only place 1 Ink Mine at a time, and it only lasted 10 seconds. Even though you had a large hitbox, the sub-weapon was so slow you did not get hit, but you would not get hit by it. But on top of it, you have light special depletion, so yeah, nothing much to lose here. Style-wise, new Squiffer kind of looks good in this. I mean, looking at the later games, it looks the same as the classic Squiffer, but with the new sticker on the side of it. So I'm going to give this, for style, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Power-wise, you are relying on Inkzooka, which is 220p, but Ink Mine just, in Splatoon 1, is not very reliable as what we see in the later games. So for its power, I'm going to have to give it a 7 out of 10 for a score of 14 out of 20. Next up is the Fresh Squiffer with Suction Bomb and Kraken. This was another good Squiffer weapon that a lot of people used, as given how broken Kraken was next to Bubbler, made it one of the most used chargers in the game. And having Suction Bomb on top of it really makes it be aggressive as well as supportive, even though Suction Bomb is very aggressive and is ink hungry, using up to 80% of your ink tank. With the Fresh Squiffer, you don't have much of a problem, as you have Kraken to protect yourself. But on top of it, you have medium depletion, so you do have to be aware of your surroundings when you're using the weapon. Style-wise, I kind of like the orange color as much as the vibrant blue that we see with the first 2 Squiffers. So for its style, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Power-wise, Suction Bomb and Kraken is very solid for a charger like this, so for its power, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 for a high score of 18 out of 20. Let's see if any chargers can top this. Next up is the Bamboozler MK1 with Splash Wall and Killer Whale. From what we see, it's basically we took what we see with the Kelp Splat Charger and the Bento Splat Charger, and then we gave it to a Bamboozler. So Splash Wall and Killer Whale is kind of like what we see with the Bento Splat Charger and the .52 Gal, which has this weapon kit. But on top of it, you have light depletion. So yeah, this is a very reliable weapon. Style-wise, I kind of like the Bamboo. Really makes it make it like it's from the days in the Turf War, in the Great Turf War. So yeah, this definitely makes it gives it that nostalgia factor, or just gives it that back in time moment. So for its style, I'm gonna give it a 8 out of 10. Power-wise, Splash Wall and Killer Whale on Bamboozler is actually very solid, so I'm going to give its power an 8 out of 10 for a score of 16 out of 20. Next up is the Bamboozler MK2 with Disruptor and Echolocator. What if we decided to take the custom Splattershot Junior's kit, which has Disruptor and Echolocator, and then give it to a Bamboozler? I mean, even though Echolocator is more expensive with its PFS at 200p, but I mean, on a Bamboozler, you can give it anything and it could just go, but you have to be aware of what special weapon it has, along with the sub-weapon you have with it. It could be very good, or it could just be pretty much lame. But on top of it, you have light depletion, so you have nothing to worry about. Style-wise, it's the same thing as the MK1, but with the Cuddle Gear sticker on the top of the weapon. But I'm still going to give it a 7 out of 10. Power-wise, Echolocator makes it good for its location, and Disruptor slows your opponents down long enough for you to get a much-needed tap shot or charge shot on them, even if you have damage up, which, in a game with damage up, damage up makes the Bamboozler a 2-shot, or it makes the weapon a 2-shot, which makes it like almost a 1-shot. But I mean, on top of it, if it had Burst Bomb, which we'll talk about in a bit, it would have been a different story. So for power, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 for a score of 14 out of 20. Next up is the Bamboozler MK3. Now we're talking power here with Burst Bomb and Ink Strike. Burst Bomb on any weapon, especially like a charger like the Bamboozler or any other weapon that is very compatible with, really makes the weapon overpowered, but at the same time, just destructive. And Burst Bomb on Bamboozler is where it is at. And pairing this weapon with damage up on your gear really makes the weapon a 1-shot. Having the Burst Bomb combo off of the Bamboozler's charge shot or tap shot really makes this weapon broken. But you have but for some odd reason, it has heavy special depletion, even though its Ink Strike is 180p, is one of the more slower specials that leaves you out in the open compared to the others. But I mean, style-wise, kind of like the Bamboozler MK3's look, really makes it, it kind of matches with the Sheldon's Pick sticker that we see, as well as for other reasons. So for its style, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Power-wise, you have Burst Bomb and Ink Strike, but I mean, a lot of people would kind of prefer Burst Bomb and Ink Strike on the regular Slosher, which I'll talk about in a later video. So for this, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 for a score of 17 out of 20. Next up is the E-Liter 3K with Burst Bomb and Echolocator. A lot of you are probably going to be saying Burst Bomb on an E-Liter is probably going to be helpful for the weapon, or it is helpful. And I think, yeah, I agree with that. But on top of it, you have medium depletion with your Echolocator at 200p. You have nothing to worry about as long as you're aware of where you are on the battlefield. Style-wise, it's not bad, but I mean, without the scope, it kind of looks bare-boned. So I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Power-wise, this is a very solid kit for the weapon for defense and supports. So I'm going to give this a 8 out of 10 for a score of 15 out of 20. Next up is the E-Liter 3K scope. This is the much better version of the E-Liter, having extra range and at the same time having Burst Bomb and Echolocator on top. Style-wise, the E-Liter scope looks a lot better than just the regular E-Liter. So for its style, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Power-wise, it's basically the same thing. 8 out of 10 for a score of 16 out of 20. Next up is the custom E-Liter with Squid Beacon and Kraken. Given how broken Kraken is, what if we decided to give it to another charger and then put Squid Beacon on top of it? I mean, custom E-Liter is supportive, but at the same time is also aggressive because of the Kraken with it. But I mean, like I've said with the regular E-Liter, it kind of looks bare-boned without the scope. But I mean, style-wise, it's just a 7 out of 10. Power-wise, you are relying on the Kraken more than the Squid Beacon. So for its power on this one, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 for a score of 14 out of 20. And finally, we have the custom E-Liter scope. Finally, we have one of the more decent weapons, as scopes are a lot better on E-Liters than just by themselves. Even though it has the same kit as the regular custom E-Liter, it has a lot more range and definitely is the most aggressive, or supportive, I should say. Style-wise, the scope looks a lot better. I'm going to give it a 8 out of 10. Power-wise, still the same thing, but in the custom E-Liter scopes outlook, this is an 8 out of 10 for a score of 16 out of 20. And that's it. That is all of our Splatoon 1 kits for the Chargers. Thank you all for watching. If you guys like the video, be sure you subscribe and don't forget to leave a like on the video. If you want to see more videos like this, just send a comment below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. And until then, stay fresh.